Please join me in the spirit of prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So when I came to First Parish 12 years ago, we moved from California, from the San Francisco Bay Area, and the search committee joked that they couldn't have moved someone much further than they had to move me to come here. I think we've evened out now, search committee. Like 12 years, one cross-country move, we're good? Yeah, okay. They won't agree, so I don't know. But we had 2 cars, twin 5-year-old boys, and a cat. We had some other stuff too. But we discerned that driving across the country with twin 5-year-old boys and a cat was probably not the greatest idea. And paying for a moving truck to transport our old high-mileage cars across the country didn't seem like a good idea to the search committee. So one of the search committee members offered their recently graduated college graduate daughter to drive one of our cars across country, so we had her drive the family minivan, and we decided to sell the other car, which meant we needed to buy a car for when we got here. And so fortunately, my mother lives in Connecticut, and we were flying to her first and then driving up to start our new adventure. So I did some digging on Craigslist and found a car that she could go look at for us and hopefully purchase, which she did. And so we landed after a very long trip, and by very long trip, I mean I think we flew out at like 5 a.m. in the morning with hyperactive twin 5-year-old boys. Yes, I keep saying that because it's a thing. Like, I want you to understand. It's more like having 7 or 8 children than it's like having 2. And when we got there, they told us the cat had to come out of the carrier so they could check it. Try to take your very mad cat out of a carrier in the airport while you're also trying to hold on to 2 hyperactive 5-year-old boys at 5 o'clock in the morning while you're moving across the country. Needless to say, when we landed, we were tired, and my mother was there. She picked us up in the new-to-us car, which was a 4-wheel drive Nissan Pathfinder, suited to take on Maine winters and whatever might come our way. And so we loaded in the 2 5-year-olds, the cat, quite a bit of luggage, my mother and us, and off we went. And about 2 miles from the airport, we heard a terrible noise. Not the cat or the kids, the car. And concerned, I made an astute comment. "What's that terrible noise?" My mother's response, "What noise?" Now keep in mind, my mother answered my question, so clearly her hearing was fine. And the noise was loud, something you could not miss. But the noise did not fit with my mother's story of the car. So she simply denied it. And so as I grew more and more frantic, the noise continued. We pulled over, we walked around the car, figured out, we crossed our fingers, it was safe to drive. We drove it back to her house. We took the car to a mechanic. We had many things replaced, like suspension and whatever. The noise actually never completely went away. Certain conditions would conspire to create a gut-wrenching, god-awful, is this car about to explode or fall apart right now noise that my mother literally never acknowledged existed. We drove that car for a number of years without incident, but you can imagine a different scenario where the noise might have been dangerous. But my mother simply could not let go of the story she had created about helping us buy a car. She helped us buy a used car. She test drove it and checked it out. It was a good used car that she purchased and provided. End of story. No room for a used car with a terrible noise. A used car that was potentially unsafe, and as such, she simply just would not empty herself of the story or understanding that she had constructed. Luke chapter 17, verse 33, "Those who try to make their life secure will lose it, but those who lose their life will keep it." That's from the New Revised Standard Version. The Message translates the same passage this way: if you grasp and cling to life on your terms, you'll lose it. But if you let that life go, you'll get life on God's terms. When we cling to our understanding of the world, no matter how much it clashes with reality, we're actually no longer participating in the world. We're participating in a myth. And a myth, by the way, that we've created, right? This is not a myth that's divinely inspired. This is something we're creating. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever lived with a myth that you're trying to keep up, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy to preserve stories that don't quite match reality, and it prevents us from engaging with people on a meaningful level, because you're always trying to present a very specific story. I wonder how our understanding of Jesus' story would be different if, when he was hanging on the cross, he had said, "Don't worry, everybody, it's all going to be fine. There's no way something bad can happen here. I am the Messiah, after all." But that's not what Jesus said. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He didn't try to pretty things up for his own sake or for those around him. He simply told it like it was. Raw reality, emotion. While not being able to empty ourselves of the stories we cling to has many consequences, one of the consequences is that clinging to and asserting something that doesn't match reality breaks down relationships with others. It's hard to figure out how to be in relationship with someone when you hear a very loud noise in your car that they simply will not say exists. They think I'm making it up, but you can ask Nora. She was there. It happened. And you've probably had an experience like that. You've probably had an experience with someone where you're like, how can that be? In Gifts of the Dark Wood, Eric Elnes points out what our faith offers us is a powerful, different understanding of how to function in the world. He says, quote, "At our place of greatest despair over ourselves and our abilities, we discover a presence, God, who loves us beyond our imagining, who chooses relationship over perfection." Relationship over perfection. That really hit me, that idea, relationship over perfection. And it made me think of when I was in my 20s, one of my closest friends said this to me: "You need to know that I am going to disappoint you." That's a given. And I found the statement very jarring at the time, but I think she was pointing to what we are talking about this morning. Our best chance at experiencing life on God's terms is to let go of the need to preserve a perfect story. Our best chance at experiencing life on God's terms is to relate to one another, glorious imperfections and all. This is, of course, easier said than done. I'm guessing we all manage at times to allow our reality to shine through, and we all strive at times to do anything we can to keep people from discovering what's actually going on with us. This week, the deacons asked me how I thought worship went last Sunday. My response was, quote, "I thought it was clunky." Unfortunately, they thought I meant they were clunky at it. That's not what I meant. What I meant was I felt rusty and out of sorts. We haven't done live in-person worship since the middle of December. The deacon's response was, "Stop being so hard on yourself." Part of what makes our worship powerful is that it's real, not perfect. I think that's what they said. Close enough, okay. They might correct me later. If we gathered every week striving to put forward a perfect worship experience, then you would be attending a performance. But that's not what this is meant to be. God doesn't intend for our life or our worship or our gathering as community to be a performance, something conjured from ideas of what perfection or success is, ideas that we create as humans. God intends for our lives to be real, because when we can embrace reality, when we can embrace what we perceive as flaws or shortcomings, when we can notice and name the noise in the car, that's when, and only then, can we understand the full impact of God's love for us. Because all of those things that we want to change or hide or deny, all of those things that make us feel not good enough, those things don't separate us from God. In fact, it's trying to manage and control those things that separates us from God. And when we can embrace that reality, that's when we come to understand the fullness of God's love. Those who try to make their life secure will lose it, but those who lose their life will keep it. Amen.